Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. Get ready for a story that will leave you breathless, full of drama, suspicion, and unexpected twists. This is the tale of a couple whose love was tested by distrust and a devastating secret. Are you ready to uncover the truth? Don't go anywhere. The bed felt like a vast ocean stretching between us. Months. It had been months since my wife, Sarah, and I had shared an intimate moment. The cold wasn't just a sensation in the air, but a permanent state in our relationship. At night, as the moon crept through the window, I'd turn to her for a hug, a touch, but only find her back. An invisible wall had risen between us, built of rejection and uncomfortable silences. Our home, once a place brimming with laughter and warmth, had become a museum of happy memories. Every corner reminded me of a time when her gaze burned for me, when her caresses were the only answer I needed. Now her eyes were vacant when she looked at me, and her hands avoided mine as if they were hot coals. I tried to talk, I tried to understand, but her answers were always the same. "I'm tired, Marcus," or "I need my space." The pain of rejection was a constant wound, deepening with each passing day. My nights were long and filled with doubt. What had I done wrong? Had I stopped being the man she fell in love with? My mind swam with unanswered questions, and the loneliness in that bed, next to the woman I loved, was a torment. Silence had become the primary language of our marriage, a language that spoke only of distance and despair. Then, one day, my world turned upside down. I walked into the house after a long day at work to find Sarah in the kitchen, with a smile I hadn't seen in ages. She had prepared my favorite meal, and the table was set in a way that transported me back to our early days together. The air wasn't cold. Instead, it was filled with the aroma of the stew I loved so much. My heart, which had grown accustomed to despair, quickened with cautious hope. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally, free from the tension that had become so familiar. She asked about my day, made me laugh with an anecdote, and for a moment I felt like Marcus again, the man who loved Sarah with all his being. It felt as if we had stepped back in time, to an era when we were best friends and lovers. The wall between us seemed to be crumbling, brick by brick, with every word we shared. After dinner, as we cleared the table, Sarah approached me with a look that took my breath away. It was no longer the vacant stare that had tormented me, but one filled with warmth and something more, something I hadn't seen in months. She took my hand and said, in a voice that was both soft and firm, "Marcus, I've been thinking a lot. I want us to have a baby." My heart stopped. After so much rejection, the request was as sudden as a summer storm. Sarah's request hit me like an electric shock. After months of absolute rejection, of living like strangers under the same roof, the idea of conceiving a child felt surreal. I was speechless, struggling to process the sudden inversion of our reality. How could intimacy be forbidden one day and the next be the basis for creating a life? I looked at her, trying to read something in her eyes, a clue to what was happening. Her gaze was serious, filled with a desire that confused me. Was it genuine? Or was there something else behind this sudden request? Hope and distrust wrestled within me, a brutal conflict between the man who wanted to believe in the woman he loved and the man who had been hurt so many times. "A baby, Sarah? After all of this, you want a baby?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion and disbelief. She nodded, her smile a mix of determination and something I couldn't decipher. She told me she'd reflected on our lives, realized how much she wanted to be a mother, and that despite the ups and downs, she wanted to do it with me. And though her request was a balm to my heart, the suddenness of it made me suspect something wasn't right. The night of that conversation, Sarah approached me with a warmth she had denied me for so long. She kissed me with a passion that reminded me why I had fallen in love with her, and whispered promises of a future that, for the first time in months, seemed possible. My body responded to her touch, to the familiarity of her kisses, but my mind couldn't stop asking questions. As she slept, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The image of Sarah, so distant and cold for months, superimposed itself with the woman next to me, so full of desire. The incongruity of her behavior was a seed of doubt growing in my mind, a poisonous vine threatening to choke the fragile hope that had begun to bloom. Why now? Why this sudden need to conceive a child? What had changed in her life to make intimacy go from a burden to a necessity? I couldn't escape the feeling that something was eluding me, that a piece of the puzzle was missing, or worse, deliberately hidden. The night became a battle between the desire to believe and the fear of being deceived. The next day, after Sarah left for work, I sat in the garden, the morning sun warming my skin. I pulled out my phone and opened a messaging app. Over the past few months, I had been talking to a trusted friend, David, about the situation in my marriage. David, who had been my confidant for years, had listened without judgment, offering his unwavering support. I wrote to him about Sarah's sudden change, about her request for a baby, and about the confusion I felt. The message was long, filled with the doubts that tormented me. He didn't take long to reply. His message was short and to the point. Marcus, something doesn't add up. The change is too drastic. As your friend, I'm telling you, you need to be alert. His words, though expected, were a punch to the gut. His advice reinforced my suspicions. I knew I had to be cautious, that I had to open my eyes and seek the truth. But how? How could I investigate the woman I loved, the woman with whom I had shared my life, without betraying her trust? The situation felt like a dead end, a cul-de-sac where every step brought me closer to a pain I wasn't sure I could bear. Night deepened, and silence was my only companion. The conversation with David had fueled my unease, and now, every gesture from Sarah, every word, was examined under the microscope of my distrust. I couldn't help it. It was an instinctive defense of my wounded heart. Intimacy with her, once a comfort, now felt like a performance, a staged act in which I was a blind participant. As Sarah showered, her phone rang on the bedside table. Normally, I wouldn't pay attention to her calls, but at that moment, the sound resonated like a gunshot in the quiet room. It was a message from an unknown number. A wave of guilt washed over me, but my curiosity was stronger. I picked up the phone, and with my heart pounding, I unlocked the screen. The message was from a woman and read, "Sarah, any news? Dying to know if you've talked to Marcus about the baby yet. Hope it works out this time." I froze. My mind, which had been constructing a theory of infidelity, suddenly found itself forced to take an unexpected detour. What did another woman have to do with the baby issue? What did "hope it works out this time" mean? The truth I thought I knew slipped through my fingers, leaving behind an even deeper mystery. The message from the woman, whose name I still didn't know, became my obsession. I reread it again and again, trying to decipher its meaning. Hope it works out this time. Did it mean they had tried this before? What was this? The idea that Sarah could be hiding something so important from me and that a third person was involved filled me with a cold anger. The rejection of the past months, the sudden change, the baby request. Everything took on a new, darker, and more treacherous dimension. I couldn't confront her outright. I needed more information. I knew it was a betrayal of trust, but at that moment, the truth was more important than anything else. I went to the bathroom, pretending to brush my teeth while my mind raced. I returned to the room when Sarah was already in bed, her breathing soft in the darkness. With a heavy heart, I took her phone from the bedside table and went to the living room. I spent the next few hours in the dim light, sifting through her messages and emails. It was like a detective searching for clues in a case that involved my own heart. I found nothing about a lover, but I did discover a long chain of emails with the same woman, named Sophia. The messages spoke of medical appointments, treatments, deadlines, and, most shockingly, a diagnosis Sarah had received months ago. She had serious difficulties conceiving a child naturally. My blood ran cold. The truth, as painful as it was unexpected, crashed over me with the force of a hurricane. Sarah hadn't rejected me out of a lack of love or infidelity, but out of desperation. She had received a devastating diagnosis, a verdict that jeopardized the dream we shared, having a family. Her distancing wasn't a wall, but a refuge where she had secluded herself to process her pain alone. The rejection, the silences, were a manifestation of her suffering. The months of coldness took on a new meaning. She hadn't pulled away from me, but from intimacy that, for her, had become a painful reminder of what her body couldn't achieve. And now, her sudden request for a baby wasn't a whim, but the manifestation of a new hope, perhaps driven by some treatment or by her friend Sophia's advice. My heart was torn between the relief of not having been deceived and the pain of having let her suffer alone, of having misinterpreted her sorrow as a lack of love. I felt like a monster. In my selfishness, in my pain, I never stopped to consider that she might be suffering. I had judged her, I had blamed her, while she secretly carried a burden that would have crushed anyone. A wave of remorse overwhelmed me. The truth I thought I had found was far deeper and sadder than I ever imagined. And now, I had to decide what to do with it. Morning arrived with a softer light, as if the sun itself had taken pity on my broken heart. Sarah woke with her new warmth, kissed me with renewed hope, and I responded with a guilt that burned within me. The secret was no longer just hers. It was ours. And now I had to deal with the knowledge, with the fact that I had invaded her privacy to discover a truth she was not ready to share. The question that tormented me was why? Why didn't she tell me? Why did she carry this pain alone? Was she afraid of my reaction? Did she think I would love her less? Or worse yet, did she think I wouldn't be strong enough to support her? Her insecurities, her fears, hit me with overwhelming force. The rejection I felt wasn't personal, but a manifestation of her own suffering. I couldn't continue the charade. I couldn't pretend I didn't know. That night, as we cuddled in bed, with her full of the hope she had regained, I knew I had to speak. I had to confess that I had violated her trust, but that I had done it out of love, out of the desperation of a husband who was losing himself. The fear of her reaction was immense, but I knew our marriage couldn't heal if one of us held such a big secret. That night, the conversation was different. There were no forced smiles or manufactured hopes. I spoke with brutal sincerity. I told her about the pain of rejection, about my confusion, and about how, in a moment of despair, I had checked her phone. Her face crumpled with surprise and pain, and I saw her eyes fill with tears. It was the first time I had seen her cry in months. Then, I told her what I had found. The emails with Sophia, the medical appointments, the diagnosis. The silence that settled between us was the heaviest of all. Sarah didn't interrupt me. She looked at me, tears streaming down her cheeks, a mix of betrayal and relief in her gaze. It was as if the dam she had built around her pain had finally broken. When I finished speaking, she didn't shout at me, didn't reproach me. Instead, she hugged me with a strength that surprised me. We cried together, for the distance that had separated us, for the secret that had tormented us, and for the pain we had felt separately. "I was afraid, Marcus," she whispered in my ear. "I was afraid you'd stop loving me, afraid I couldn't give you what you always wanted." And in that embrace, in those tears, I knew that the wall had not crumbled. It had shattered into pieces, allowing light to re-enter our lives. From that night on, our relationship took a radical turn. We were no longer two people sharing a house, but a team facing a challenge together. Sarah told me in detail what she had been going through: the treatments, the waiting, the emotional roller coaster she had experienced in secret. She explained that her friend Sophia, who had been through a similar situation, had been her only confidant, and that she hadn't told me anything for fear of my reaction. I felt like an idiot. For months, in my selfishness, I had only thought about my pain, my rejection, without stopping to consider that hers might be infinitely greater. I had judged her. I had blamed her while she was silently crumbling. My remorse was a weight I would carry for a long time, but it was also a catalyst for change. We decided that, from that moment on, there would be no more secrets between us. That we would face the challenge of conception together, as the team we always should have been. Her hope of having a baby was no longer an unexpected request, but a shared dream. A struggle that was now ours. The cold in the bed had disappeared, replaced by the warmth of two bodies, and two souls that had found each other again after being lost in the labyrinth of distrust and pain. The truth's revelation bound us together in a way nothing else could have. Doubts dissolved, and trust, though wounded, began to heal. Sarah explained why her friend, Sophia, had become so deeply involved. Sophia was a gynecologist at a fertility clinic and had been her confidant throughout her struggle. It was for this reason that Sarah turned to her for treatment. I was relieved that there was no romantic betrayal, but rather a secret filled with pain. Sarah told me that after months of failed treatments, she had decided to give up. The pain of each unsuccessful cycle was a brutal reminder of her inability, and it had plunged her into depression. It was then she decided to create distance between us, as intimacy had become a source of stress rather than pleasure. For her, every act of love had turned into a reminder of what her body couldn't do. The breaking point was when Sophia told her about a new option, an experimental treatment that had shown promising results. That's when Sarah regained hope and energy and felt she had to try again, that she had to reconnect with me. Her request for a baby wasn't a whim, but the manifestation of a new faith, one I had misinterpreted. Her secret had been her motherhood in the shadows, a journey she had tried to navigate alone. We decided it was time to be a team. The medical appointments, which Sarah used to face alone with her friend, we now faced together. I entered the fertility clinic for the first time and was overwhelmed by the atmosphere. There were couples of all ages, their faces a mix of hope and anxiety. It was a club I didn't know we belonged to, a world of tests, appointments, and endless waiting. Sophia, who greeted us with a warm smile, explained the treatment plan in detail. It was a cutting-edge option, a procedure that, though costly and emotionally exhausting, offered a possibility of success. Sarah listened attentively, her eyes shining with a hope that deeply moved me. For the first time in a long time, we were on the same page, fighting for the same dream. The appointments became part of our routine. We went to the tests, the ultrasounds, the consultations, and with each step, we held on to each other. There were no more secrets between us, and communication, which had broken down, had been re-established with renewed strength. The love I felt for Sarah deepened, not just for the woman she was, but for the warrior she had proven to be in her silent struggle. As the treatment progressed, I realized the immense emotional burden Sarah had carried alone. The hormonal changes, the anxiety of waiting, the physical pain of injections and extractions, everything was part of an ordeal she had faced in the solitude of her silence. I felt completely useless, unable to fully understand what she was going through, but determined to be by her side. The rejection of the past months, the distancing, took on a new meaning. She hadn't pulled away from me, but from the pain that was consuming her, a pain that for her was too personal to share. Every refusal of intimacy was not a rejection of me, but a silent cry from her body, which felt broken and useless. And now, as I watched her go through the treatment with unwavering bravery, my admiration for her grew by leaps and bounds. This new phase of our marriage, though filled with uncertainty and difficult moments, was also filled with a new kind of love. A love not just based on passion, but on unconditional support, empathy, and the promise to be together, no matter the outcome. Our fight for a baby had become our fight for ourselves, for our marriage, for the trust that had been lost. And in that fight, we were more united than ever. One day, while Sarah was having one of her tests, I stayed in the waiting room and approached Sophia. I wanted to thank her, but I also wanted to understand. I sat next to her and said, "Thank you for looking after her, Sophia, and for being by her side when I wasn't." She looked at me with a sad smile. "Sarah is my best friend, Marcus, and she's been through a lot. It's not easy for a woman to face a diagnosis like that, especially when she feels her biological clock ticking. She was afraid to tell you because she was afraid of losing you. She thought you would leave her for someone who could give you a family," she explained, her voice soft and full of empathy. Her words opened my eyes to the immensity of the burden Sarah had carried. I realized that my pain from the rejection was valid, but hers was a much deeper wound. I had let her suffer alone out of a mix of insecurity and fear. And at that moment, I promised myself that there would be no more solitary pain in our relationship, that every obstacle we faced we would face as a team, regardless of the circumstances. Despite the stress of the treatment, we made an effort to rekindle the romance that had been lost. We planned date nights, weekend getaways, and small gestures that reminded us why we had fallen in love. Intimacy was no longer a taboo subject, but a way to reconnect, to reaffirm our love, without the pressure of a specific outcome. Sarah, with a newfound lightness in her spirit, opened up to me again. Her eyes sparkled, her laughter was genuine, and her hugs were warm and full of love. She told me she had felt so alone in her pain that she had forgotten the joy of simply being loved. And now, with my unconditional support, she felt strong enough to love again and allow herself to be loved. The rejection of the past months became a distant memory, a shadow in our past that reminded us how far we had come. The treatment continued, with its ups and downs, but uncertainty no longer consumed us. We had a new purpose: to reconnect, to heal, and above all, to love each other through everything. The baby, for now, was just a dream, but our love, our friendship, and our trust were an unbreakable reality. And that, my friends, is the truth I came to know, a truth far deeper than I ever imagined. If this story touched you, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell. Until next time.